Wilson, Dagmar van Ravenswaay. I'm sorry, I'm very bad with Dutch names. Really sorry. Well, welcome. It's a real pleasure and honor to open this The Gap in Between with these two amazing experts in the field of investment. It's really an honor to have you both here in Valencia, sharing with us all your experience and knowledge. So to start with, this panel is called about a journey about profit and purpose. So please let us know about your journeys. I know they are very extensive, and we can maybe know just a little bit, but please let us know about you, yourself, and the work you have been doing so far in the investment world.
Great. Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here in beautiful Valencia, my first time here. Thank you for inviting me. So I thought, my journey actually started when I was young. And my dream when I was a kid was to work on Wall Street. My grandfather worked on Wall Street, and I admired him so much. And I thought, that is what I want to do. Maybe after I go to college and business school and I work for many years, I'll end up on Wall Street. But at the same time, when I was growing up, we moved every couple of years. And so community and really making a difference and having an impact during the short time that we were living in a place was really important to me. So that was always a core value. So fast forward, actually right after college, my dream job came to me and I worked on Wall Street. And I discovered that Wall Street was maybe missing this element of community and impact. I later had a chance to work in venture capital where I thought, okay, we're working with entrepreneurs, we're helping them build companies. But at least at that time, venture capital was really about the money. How do you really maximize profit? And so I thought, okay, something is really missing. So I set up a portfolio career where I could work across the public sector, private sector, and academia. And I could integrate entrepreneurship, innovation, finance, and impact. And so I've been really privileged to be able to work with a number of organizations, including with the OECD. I worked with them for more than 12 years. When I started, I was working on venture capital, angel investment. And then I got the opportunity to work on impact investment. I actually led the work on impact investment at OECD over a number of years. And I got to be part of the communities of the Global Steering Group on Impact Investing, EVPA, and others from the very beginning. So I really sort of grew up with the impact community in Europe, and it's just been amazing. And I also was leading the work on impact measurement and management. Anyway, I left the OECD last year because I realized the impact community has grown so much, and what's really needed at this stage is to get the mainstream on board. So I've been on a journey the last year to try to work more with the mainstream asset management firms, private equity, venture capital, and help them with impact and sustainability strategies. And so for me, it's sort of a full circle moment because I'm coming back to the mainstream financial market, but I'm bringing the impact and sustainability, and actually they're also coming to me. And so it's really been amazing because it's not just from profit to purpose, it's actually profit and purpose together. And I think that's what we all have to strive for.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen. Dagmar, what about you, your journey?
So my journey is, I very much believe in what fits best at a certain pace of your career. So I started off as a lawyer, worked for 6 years as a lawyer, and then made a deliberate move on to this Dutch central bank where I worked 10 years, heading up different teams doing supervision on integrity of the financial sector. And I shifted towards innovation more with regards to working for Adyen, which is a Dutch unicorn, and I was there during the scale-up phase. So I got exposed to a lot of scale-up sort of experience and struggles and challenges. And with that, also the IPO. I was part of the IPO team. And then I made a shift again towards even more impactful driven work. So I want to spend my time, my money, and my knowledge and experience in more impactful worlds. So I joined a venture capital firm where we invest in tech companies founded by women. So closing the gender gap there. And currently also started in my new role as a senior partner for LUMO Labs, where we not only have a program to help founders, impactful founders, to go to create this path towards creating larger companies. We invest in the Sustainable Development Goals, climate action, health and well-being, quality education, and in that journey, we also very much acknowledge the scalability possibilities of technology. So profound it is to invest in deep tech AI, blockchain, and also security, IoT, AR, and VR. So for me, this is also bringing these worlds together. As a personal investment, I've made 6 direct investments and 20 indirect investments at this stage, and they all have an impactful underlying business model.
Perfect. Yeah. So we will be talking about gender gap in investments, but there are other gaps, and throughout today, the gap in between, we will be talking about many of these gaps. And one of the gaps that I want to talk with you, Karen, it's about the gap in impact investing. I mean, we have been talking a lot about how much money is needed, how much capital needed is to achieve the SDGs. It has been estimated around $4 trillion to achieve them. So for some years, the movement has been around how we move more capital towards impact. And now I think what we are understanding it's important the amount, but also the depth that this capital is achieving in terms of impact. It's not only about moving trillions, that of course it is, but also about how this capital is really impactful. So how you, that as you have just told us, you have so much experience in the field, you have been pioneer and one of the people who is behind of the big sector networks, etc. How do you see this gap in terms of investing for the sector?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone talks about the fact that we need more money. Actually, there's a lot of money out there. The issue is the money is not going to where it's most needed. So how do we get more money to where it's needed? We had a session yesterday on blended finance, and certainly blending finance, bringing together public sector money, philanthropy, and private sector money is one way, but what's really important is that we have all of the players across the spectrum of capital. You know, on one hand, we have the philanthropists, and they just want to have impact. They're often just giving grants, and they are hoping they're going to have some impact. On the other hand, we have the institutional investors that are looking to have a financial return, and they at least didn't used to think about impact. They were just trying to maximize return. But across the spectrum of capital, we have more and more players now. It used to be just business and philanthropy. And in some countries, that's still the case. And it's hard to understand. But actually, the gap in between is no longer a gap because we have venture philanthropists that are using venture capital models to invest and help social enterprises become sustainable. We have impact investors. We have mainstream investors that are looking at sustainability, responsible investment, ESG. So we have the whole spectrum of capital. And what I would say is all of this capital is really important. We need the philanthropy. We need venture philanthropy. We need impact investing. But we also really need that institutional capital. If we can move the needle on this huge pile of money and get even a small percent of that to be investing more sustainably and with impact, that's also really, maybe the impact is less per euro, but the amount of euros is higher. So the impact per euro on the philanthropy side might be higher, but maybe the total amounts are smaller. So if we can really maximize and get all players across the spectrum of capital stepping up and doing what they can, and that's why I'm really trying to work with companies and investors to help them understand how they can step up.
Great. Dagmar, you have been talking about the work that in LUMO Labs or yourself are doing in terms of supporting and investing in tech startups, in blockchain, AI, etc. Today, the gap in between is also about innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology, and the role that technology plays in solving these challenges. So can you please share with us how you see that role of technology playing in solving these challenges? What are you doing in LUMO Labs to support these innovations, technology that are coming?
Yeah. So I think we are at the verge of. Yesterday, I read an article about the US, the UK pension funds that are going to allocate, in fact, part of their money to impact investing. But for the time being, I mean, it's very important that venture capital firms are shifting that needle already. And why we invest in these companies and these tech companies is because they can scale and solve problems at a global level quite rapidly. I always believe in just sort of giving the right example. So helping those founders and creating sort of a critical mass makes it more and more important also maybe for the incumbent companies to really make that shift. And maybe just as an example for the latest investment that we've done with LUMO Labs is in a company called Tap Electric. And they are helping the electric car movement to make it easier and easier to tap everywhere you can, because you see all these different companies coming up doing electric charging, but what you miss is actually the interoperability of all those companies. And I think that is really setting the example. And maybe they will be exited to a large corporate, but then you have the shift there as well. So we are very active in the ecosystem in the Netherlands, but also abroad, in Spain, for instance. We want to allocate in our next fund that will be 100 million, at least 10% also to Spanish startups and scale-ups. So very excited also to team up with people who are interested in co-investing, but also who are interested in investing in our fund, because then you create that sort of diversity also from a cultural level.
And if I can just build on what you're saying about venture capital, I mentioned that the venture capitalists were sort of the first ones that came to me when I left OECD. And the reason they did that was that their portfolio companies, the companies that they had invested in, had been asking them, regulation is coming. What do we do? What is ESG? What is sustainability? You know, all these new laws. And these venture capital firms are like, oh, wow, okay, well, we're not really sure ourselves. But anyway, so they realized that they had a very important role to work with their investee companies. And also, they had to think about their own strategies. How committed did they want to be to this? Are they just going to do the minimum that regulation often requires? Or are they going to really step up and make it part of their competitive advantage to be a leader in sustainability? So I've really had a privilege to work with a number of VCs that are really trying to step up and make this a core part of their strategy. The thing that hasn't happened yet, the investors in the venture capital firms, unfortunately, the limited partners, they're not yet asking for this. We should be getting to the point where they're asking for this. They're not yet. But the venture capital firms that are implementing these strategies, they're finding that they're getting new investors coming to the table, which is also great, and also their portfolio companies.
So important that LPs are requiring that, right? That's why Socialness Foundation, we work with LPs with our FI initiative, because if LPs require that, it will help also to move everything, right? So you mentioned diversity. There's another gap in the investment world, which is the gender gap. Yesterday in our FI gathering, Kenneth was mentioning that only 1.9% of the VC capital goes to women. So having you both so experts in the field, being also female investors, I wanted to ask you about the gender gap in investment. How do you see this improving somehow? What can we do? Because these challenges that we are talking about requires the diverse perspectives, right? Otherwise, we are not going to be able to tackle and solve the challenges if we don't have the different perspectives of everyone. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, I think you're missing out on opportunities if you don't invest in diverse teams. And with our fund at LUMO Labs, I mean, we don't have it at the core of our investment thesis, but we have more than half of all our portfolio companies have diverse teams. So I think that is even more strong if you just choose the right people to build the next sort of unicorn company to solve problems that are related to rapid urbanization or demographic changes. And we see so many cool things happening also in that field, often spin-offs of universities. And there it's like, the women, it's no question that they will want to start building a company. They're not interested in working for these large corporates anymore. They want to build something and they want to do something very meaningful. But it is also super important to have role models. I mean, that's everybody who listens to us now probably knows. But it is very much helping the ecosystem if I, who am part of all the investment decisions at LUMO Labs, can also have a say at the table with that lens on.
And speaking of role models, I can't be in a conversation about gender without mentioning Suzanne Bagel, who was the leader in gender lens investing. She created Gender Smart, which is now merged with 2X and has become a very powerful global community working on gender lens investing. And I had the honor to be there in Luxembourg at their global meeting recently. Unfortunately, as many people know, Suzanne was ill and she passed away 2 days before the gathering, but she really has made a huge contribution to the field. I also wanted to say, when I first started working in venture capital, I was the first professional woman they had ever hired. So it was quite a struggle. And when I came to the impact space, I've been really happy to see the diversity in the impact space. And there are a lot more women. But I think what we're missing is women in leadership. And especially in the impact roles in organizations, it's often young women that are hired to lead the impact work. And it's great that they're women, but it's not great that they're not in the senior position. They should be. They should be brought in as partners. They should be part of the leadership team. They should be on the boards. I mean, whether men or women, but the impact people need to really be part of the leadership.
Definitely. So we have just a couple of minutes, but before we leave, the gap in between, it's about inspiration, it's about collaboration, but it's a lot about action. So we wanted to have all these discussions, but also to get some kind of advice, call to action that you can give all the people here that are entrepreneurs, innovators, corporates, people from the government, investors. What would be your call to action to all of us? So after today, we can continue our work and for having a better future.
So mine would be to think about the impact that you're having as an individual every day. Because it's not enough to go to the office and talk about impact and come home and do things that are not impactful. You don't leave impact at the door when you leave the office. So how do you really lead an impactful life as an individual in your community and in your organization and also in the ecosystem?
Yeah. So leave impact, 24 hours, 7 days a week.
I would just encourage everybody to think and consider if you're in finance or if you're in working in a different field as a student, maybe to consider making that shift and using your brain power to work for a company that has impact at its core, because then sort of it's a force for good. And for me, it has been a massive difference to work for a force for good, because then it's all positive. Then you're sort of surfing the waves instead of pushing and pushing and pushing something, which can be super, sort of negative. Might also be needed, but it depends a bit on what kind of character do you have. You want to press against it, or do you want to ride the wave? So I advise you to also to invest a bit, even if it's a small amount.
And I think it's important to have new players coming into the ecosystem. And so I'm really delighted to have a very talented artist, Victoria, who joined us today. And, how do we really integrate sustainability and impact into all disciplines?
We need everyone,
Yes.
right, to come and work together. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, and we continue.